Hello again from my front porch. It is an absolutely gorgeous evening here in Iowa tonight, and I'll tell you, I really appreciate these longer time frames because during the winter it's harder to do these shows. Number one, it's cold out here, but also everything's dark in the morning or in the evening, so it's harder to get them done. But so now I get to come home after work and ta-da! It's still nice out, and got the nice little glow of the sun. It's not harsh bright on me. It's over there, behind the clouds and the houses as it's going down in the west. And so it's really great. I really like it right now the way it is. Now, what I really want to talk to you about though is not about the nice weather, but I just like talking about the nice weather. And again, if you were here sitting on my porch, we'd be talking about random weather, other stuff. But something that's kind of got me riled up right now is this whole concept of political hypocrisy. And this is not going to be a political video. That's not where I'm going with this. Where I'm going with this is people who are incredibly inconsistent. That they claim that there's a cause that they want to fight for, that there's a principle for something that they pursue, but how quickly those principles go right out the window when it's no longer, when the parties flip. When it's someone from my party doing whatever, I will make excuses. In fact, I will carry water for them. I will support them. I will find rational reasons to defend whatever they're doing. But if the parties flip and the next person does anything even close to the same thing, I'm going to rip them apart because of their abuse of power, because of their lack of compassion, because of any laundry list of reason, take your pick. Point is, when that happens, those individuals reveal themselves to not be principled individuals. They reveal themselves to be partisan individuals. And not just partisan individuals, but partisan hypocrite individuals. And that just really annoys me. Like this right now, the big news is President Trump went and met with the leader of North Korea. Now, first sitting president to do so. Big, there's a lot of things. People comparing it to when Nixon went to China, all this kind of stuff. Of course, as a result of that, President Trump's supporters say, that was amazing, that was awesome, that was incredible. He should get a Nobel Peace Prize for that. And of course, President Trump's detractors say, there's no substance. It's just talk till this point. Yeah, they signed this agreement. We don't even know what's in this agreement. We don't know what he agreed to. We don't know what's going on with it. There's so much more to be known here. We can't be bad. Let's hope that it's a good, And so the two sides, they draw very predictable sides. But here's the interesting thing. When it was President Obama that was in office, the same people who are praising President Trump for having reached out and held this meeting with the leader of North Korea, those same individuals, they badmouthed Barack Obama, saying, well, what kind of president is this? He wants to talk to dictators. He wants to try to be friends with these evil people. The same people who applaud President Trump and say, yay, he should get a Nobel Peace Prize for this, criticized the Obama administration when it was just suggested that Barack Obama was willing to talk to the leader of North Korea. And obviously that didn't happen, but still, even if it had, I believe that predictably we would see the exact same responses that we're seeing now, but flip the other way. Because bottom line, both of these groups adding their responses, they're partisan hypocrites. That's all they are. All they care about is their partisanship and using whatever situation comes up to their advantage in the pathetic power game that is Washington, D.C. now. And it's really sad, because what should matter here, no matter who the president was, what should matter is that we have started a process that will hopefully lead to a more stable Korean peninsula, that will de-escalate the nuclear and military buildup and posturing that was taking place. And, you know, we may never be allies and friends with North Korea, but if we can just not be quite so confrontational and aggressive, that's a good thing. And, you know, again, it doesn't matter who the president is, we should all want that to happen. Now, as for the treaties, not knowing the details, and so we should be skeptical and cynical and negative towards it. You know, when the Affordable Care Act was passed, we didn't know what was in it. In fact, Nancy Pelosi had the famous quote saying that they had to pass it to know what was in it. That's still one of the most absurd statements that I think I've ever heard anybody make. Here you have the Speaker of the House of Representatives at the time telling her people to vote for it, even though they didn't really know what was in it. Well, it passed, it got implemented, and then they had to try to figure out how to make the thing work. And that took a lot of time, and in fact, there are still pieces of the Affordable Care Act that have not been implemented because they still can't figure out how to make it work. In the meantime, a whole bunch of pieces of it have started falling apart. And it had to go through 30, 40 some revisions that the White House took on themselves without ever sending it back to Congress. Now, can you imagine, just for a moment, if President Bush or if President Trump were to try to pull some stunt like that? The people who supported Barack Obama getting away with those things, and the Democrats getting away with passing the Affordable Care Act without it really being clear what was in it, or the executive administration tinkering with legislation without sending it back to the legislative branch to do it, those same people who supported that, they would crucify President Trump, or they would have crucified President Bush, and the people who did crucify President Obama for those things, and the Democrats, would applaud President Trump and the Republicans for doing those things. So it boggles my mind that these people are so passionate in their hypocrisy. I find it difficult to fathom. And yet, in a moment of true confession, I will say, there was a time when that was me too. That I was just like that. I was a very partisan individual, and you know, I could parrot the party line as much as anyone. Then I ran for office. I ran for state senate back in the 1990s, and that was a very educational experience. Now, I already knew how the system worked. I wasn't ignorant of it. I mean, I was a licensed teacher of U.S. government and U.S. history at the junior, senior high level here in Iowa. So I'd studied this stuff, and I had been around it since before I could vote. I'd been actively involved in political things. But when you run for office, you get a chance to see behind the curtain. And that was very eye-opening in a not so positive way. That's where my cynicism of politics really began to start to form. And it wasn't too long after that that I really found myself increasingly pulling back, not just from politics, but even from my own party that I was part of, to the point that eventually I walked away from the party and became an independent. Because you just see things, and you become aware of things that show you that there's a lot of ugly to what happens behind the scenes. At the time that I ran, the contract with America was the big thing. Remember Newt Gingrich and the congressional Republicans, all the Republicans running, they came up with this document saying that if America gives us the majority in Congress, we will do these things. And all these Republican congressional candidates signed up on this document, and it worked. They won. But I got in trouble with other Republicans because I kind of mocked the contract with America, not the contents. There was a lot that was in the document that I thought, okay, these things all make sense. What I mocked was the fact that it was newsworthy that politicians were signing a document promising this is what I will do, and that they were actually going to do it. I thought it was incredibly sad that we had gotten to a point where a politician being held accountable and really honestly pledging to follow through on their campaign promises was newsworthy. That ought not be news. That should just be the way it is. But it's not. And we all know it. And we all knew it back then too. I simply thought it was a very sad commentary on the state of where our nation is, that the contract with America was that big a deal. Well, now we're at a point where everything is a big deal. But it's either a good big deal or a bad big deal based on which side of the political fence you're on. And as someone who now is pretty firm, sitting right on that fence in the middle, although I still do lean a little right on some occasions and a little left on other occasions. In fact, sometimes I might go substantially to the right or substantially to the left on some things. But for the most part, my position now in that no man's land in the middle allows me to be able to identify the extremist stupidity that I see on both sides and the absolute political hypocrisy. And it honestly saddens me as much as it frustrates me, because I keep thinking, we are better than this. These people pulling these games, they don't have to be the ones we elect. There are better people out there. Why do we keep electing the people who, but the problem is they're the only ones who run, because our process also is one that is so focused on destruction. Opinion polls say we don't like negative politics. We don't like negative politics. And yet, in a sign of ultimate hypocrisy of us, the voters, we say we don't like negative campaigning, and yet we reward those who are the most effective at it by continuing to re-elect them into office, where they continue to do the things that got them there, the things that were successful for them. So we have no one to blame but ourselves. We have no one to blame but ourselves for electing people who are hypocritical in their campaigns. We also have no one to blame but ourselves when we elect people who are hypocritical once they get in office, and we don't hold them accountable when the next election cycle comes around. And this is the one really, truly political statement I will make here. There is an election coming up this November. I encourage you to really consider whether the individuals currently representing you who are on the ballot, if they are currently doing what you felt they were going to do when they were running for office. And if they're not, November is your chance to state your opinion that it's time for them to go. Do it. Go for it. That's what the process is about. That's what your voice matters. Do it. But just don't be a hypocrite. Don't oppose somebody who's with the other party because they're doing things. Immigration is going on right now. This whole separating the kids from the parents. Now, there have been some new guidelines added that made it even worse. But that process was underway before President Trump became president. That was a process that was underway under the Obama administration too. And yet all these people complaining about it now didn't say a peep back then. Why? Because when it's your party doing it, you turn a blind eye. But when it's the other party doing it, you will focus on everything because you are interested in one thing: defeating them so your party can be in power. That's not the way it should be. We should focus on the issue, something that matters. Like, for example, I'm neither Republican or Democrat, but again, I tend to identify a lot on some conservative issues. And on immigration, I'm probably somewhat conservative on that. I think it is important to enforce the immigration laws, and if we don't want to enforce them, then we should change the laws, not ignore them. That's the way it should work. But having said that, I don't see any reason why families have to be separated at the border. I totally understand holding them in a detention facility while they're being processed and determining what to do with them. Got that. But there's no reason, no logical reason to separate children from families. It is a form of torture, in my opinion, and it's reprehensible, and it ought not be happening. But honestly, I swear, as much as I tried to rip, I didn't know that was happening under the Obama administration. I had not heard of that. I had not seen it. It was nowhere in the media like it is now. See, that's hypocritical. For it to suddenly be an issue now when it's a Republican in the White House that, people want to get rid of, but it wasn't an issue that deserved this level of attention when a Democrat was in the White House, that's hypocritical. That is not principled. You don't tell me that you care about those families and you don't like that happening if you did know about it back under the Obama administration and didn't say anything. That makes you a hypocrite too. Don't be a hypocrite when you vote. Think about what are the principles that you stand on. What are the things that matter to you? Which candidates actually stand on those principles? And regardless of what their party affiliation is, forget the letter that comes after the last name. Vote for the principles. Vote for the candidate who will stand up for the things that you want them to stand up for. Don't worry about what anybody else is saying. Don't worry about what anyone else is voting. Vote your conscience. Vote your principles. And be a principled person rather than a political hypocrite. All right. I need to get a soapbox apparently for some of these episodes like this because then I can climb off it now. But I just had to get that off my chest. Thank you for being here for this part of the conversation, and feel free to comment and add your 2 cents worth either on Facebook or on the YouTube channel. I look forward to talking to you next time about whatever it is that pops in my head, or if you have suggestions about topics, feel free to let me know those too. And I'll see you next time right here from my front porch.